We're taking in many billions of dollars. There's been absolutely no inflation, and frankly, it hasn't cost our consumer anything. I just see where we've collected close to $59 billion in tariffs so far, and in my opinion, the consumer has not paid for it because of the devaluation by China. The tariffs have cost nothing, in my opinion, or certainly very little. We're not paying for the tariffs. China is paying for the tariffs for the 100th time.
All right, let's bring Rebecca Walser in on this. Yeah, obviously it's a change, Rebecca. I think for investors and for everybody else, it's important to see or try to figure out why the president's changing his tune on this. Is he indicating that maybe he's willing to cut a deal with China sooner rather than later? Or is he saying, hey, listen, I'm the guy that has to take them on, so I got to fight this longer than we would think, and I need the Fed to help me out with lower rates? I mean, how do you read this, what we've seen here the last couple of days?
Yeah, I think it's the latter, Connell. I mean, the fact, if President Trump is absolutely right, and I think that he does believe that ultimately China pays the price of the tariffs, but he does see that, you know, the recessionary card is being called out very much so the last week and a half. And so he's basically letting people know this is not easy. This is a hard job. This is a long-term, long-play strategy. And, you know, when you're watching the market every day like he does, I mean, we know he watches the market every day and tweets about it and it bothers him and he really cares, then he's looking for some reprieve from the Federal Reserve so that he can have a long-term strategy, because the short-term, you know, and of course it was him that added the tariffs, you know, after the Federal Reserve cut the rates last month.
Right.
The very next day. So part of it is his time frame. But again, he sees it as a long-term strategy, and he does need the time to do it. And frankly, we need it. We've already had 50 multinationals change their supply chain because of these tariffs. And that's what we need, because China ultimately doesn't want to be China supplying, you know, the United States with their cheap goods. Look at the Made in China 2025 plan.
Now, it's interesting, like we were just talking about it a moment ago, and Dan Mitchell brought it up, is that the short-term stimulus, and now that the president's acknowledging the reality economically that, you know, this is China's not paying the tariffs. This does hurt American consumers and certainly might hurt them more in the past. Dan brings up the point, and there are many who have this point of view, that if you would just take off the tariffs, that would be what the economy needs. But you're saying this fight with China long-term is really what the country needs. That's the argument he's making now, right?
Yes, absolutely. And people don't understand that. We can always, you know, go and fix the short-term pain and feel good about ourselves. But when you are dealing with a country that strategically wants to take the place and surpass the United States as the preeminent economic leader of the free world, of the entire world, because they're obviously communist, then we can't play the short game. The short game, I think he's saying in that press conference, is it would be easy for him to deal and just say, forget it, and let's just move on. But that is not what's in the best interest of American business or the American consumer long term, because we know China is trying to get rid of the cheap labor, the cheap goods, and they're trying to become semiconductor and much more advanced and technologically sophisticated from an engineering perspective and a manufacturing perspective. So they're not going to be the China that we're used to, that we're trying to help them preserve by saying let's just get rid of all this and forget about all of it. That is just totally wrong. He has to stay the course. That's why you have Chuck Schumer, who's obviously the head of the Democratic Party in the Senate, also agreeing with him, stay the course on China. It has to get done.
Rebecca, thanks. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on, as always.
Thank you, Connell.
Rebecca Walser. Now.